president of the League of Women Voters Park Rapids. I got to get my mouth working right here. Sorry. And I'm glad that you're all here this afternoon and you're participating in our democracy. We've got three special guests today: Robin Fish from the Park Rapids Enterprise, Megan Buffington from KAXE Radio, and Derek Rickey from Park Rapids Lake Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm also recording this so that we can hopefully post it on our website and Facebook, and that way people can share with others that might need this before the caucuses. And let's see here. And the other thing, you might want to minimize your pictures so that you can see the slides and the video that I'm going to show a little bit later. So our reminder, Park Rapids League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We encourage informed and active participation in government and influence public policy through education and advocacy. We do not support or oppose political parties or their candidates. We do, however, educate the public on how to be part of the political process and civic engagement. Our generalized agenda here is I'm going to give you some general information about caucuses, and then I've got a section of a video that's comes from a webinar done by Michael Walls of the Secretary of State's office that he presented about how the different parties handle caucuses, and then we'll take some general questions. So, precinct caucuses are local meetings of political parties. They're not run by the government, but by the parties themselves, and are considered party activities. You have to remember that local candidates, such as our county commissioners, city council, mayor, etc., these are nonpartisan offices, and they're not part of the selection process in a caucus system. The caucuses will be held on February 3rd at 7 p.m. And if you don't know where your location is, there's a precinct finder on the Secretary of State's website. And also you can call the political parties directly to see where they are here. I do have a list that I could send out, that PDF, if somebody wants to email me afterwards and say, send it to me, where I think most of the precincts will be located. So the important thing is, why are these caucuses and their cousins, the primaries, important? We know that Minnesota had caucuses every 2 years, and we'd have a whole bunch of people would attend every 4 years because everybody was doing a preliminary vote for who you want to nominate for president. It got overwhelmed in 2016, and they moved the presidential nominations to a primary system. Since that time, the caucuses have gone on because that's the party business and the party organization. So just as a statistic here, in 2018, we had about 5.6 million inhabitants in Minnesota. That year, 34,000 plus people attended the DFL caucus. In 2022, 18,000 plus people attended GOP precinct caucus. Given this number of people, the registered voters are probably around 3 million, which means about 0.5% to a full percent of the registered voters were making all the decisions of who was going to be on the ballot and which were the pressing issues candidates were going to talk about in that election cycle. And Derek, can you unmute your microphone? And I know you've got a couple of things to say about how important these caucuses are.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. I would say from a chamber standpoint, in terms of representing the business community, we are advocates for business owners and businesses to engage in this process, to engage with our public officials and future public officials to, be a part of the governing process. I think Carolyn outlined it very well in the sense of caucuses can be a forgotten component of government in many ways. And it's important for voices to be heard and to be heard early in the process, to share some of the challenges that we may be facing and be able to have some discussions around them. And then have your voice heard in terms of candidate selection. Ensuring that the most qualified and best leaders rise to the top of our candidate polls, that we have to be engaged in the caucuses and the primaries. And unfortunately, our society is less engaged than we should be. Within Minnesota, we have incredible voter engagement and turnout within elections. We have significant work to do in terms of our engagement with caucuses and primaries. And so we've been encouraging the business community to be more active and more engaged with local public entities and public officials and all aspects of what we do. Unfortunately, many businesses are very careful in terms of how they engage and what their opinions are, for fear of retribution. That especially in small communities, nobody wants to be boycotted because they stand for something on a personal basis. But the reality is um, bridging the gap between public and private sectors are critically important. And the caucuses and the primaries are a great way to do that, with less visibility and pressure than major elections. So that's a little bit of some of the discussions we're having, and I think it applies to the general public as well.
Thank you. It's it's always good to have another voice chime in besides the League of Women Voters saying how important government and caucuses and primaries and all these election things are. Okay. In Minnesota, we have two major political parties, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party and the Republican Party of Minnesota. These parties are actually required by law to hold a caucus and get input from the voters. We have several minor parties, but they are not required to have caucuses. And at this time, I don't think they're going to hold any. They're the Grassroots Legalize Cannabis Party, the Independence Party, the Legal Marijuana Now Party, and the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. And they do have, the bottom three have websites that if you want to find out more about them, they could hold caucuses, but at a very different time or place, things like that. So you sort of have to ferret that information out yourself. The other big question is, first it says like, what in the world are the caucuses? The next one is, well, I'm not a registered Republican or Democrat. I can't go to those. Well, in Minnesota, no one registers by party affiliation. Some states do, we don't. So when you register to vote, you just register to vote. You don't tell anybody which party. So to participate in our party caucuses, you just have to agree with the principles of the party as stated in the party's constitution. So the relevant question is, do you believe in the basic principles of that party? If you say yes to that, then that's the caucus you go to. This part, I'm going to go to the video that was by that Secretary of State's website. They invited one Republican and one Democrat to come and explain, because since these are party meetings, each one has a different set of rules, slightly different, but a little bit. So we're going to listen to these two ladies that can say it much better than I can. And I'm hoping that sound is going to play for everybody. And we'll see what happens here. Are you seeing a blue screen with the word Republican Party on it? Okay. So stop sharing. Share it again. Now are you?
Yes.
Yes, hey, it worked. All right. This will take about 20 minutes or so. And you might try turning up your volume on your computer or device too. Okay.
Statewide interest in having young people who have an affiliation or a possible interest in their party to get them active. Because out of our office, we don't care who you vote for. We just want you to know how to vote and hopefully to get out and vote. So, Patricia, I'm going to turn it over to you. There is your first slide, and I'm going to be quiet.
Yeah, so you've really done a great job, Michael, of covering a significant portion of what caucus is about, some of the nuts and bolts. Obviously, we do different things. So we elect delegates that represented a certain component of the voting population in the last major election. So either the president or gubernatorial elections are the basis by how many delegates you get per precinct. A lot of people don't recognize that. So your vote does matter all along this entire cycle, which is a 2-year cycle. I would go above and beyond just some of the things you've mentioned, but I think the importance of is being connected to your local community of people who are like-minded to discuss issues, to bring forward some ideas, like you mentioned, the resolutions that can be lifted up and become melted into part of the party platform, which helps to guide elected officials as to the things that we believe matter. I think that there is an ability to have a voice, like you said, in that fashion, because you get interactions with candidates. You get to know more than a name on a sign or a name on a line. You get to actually have an experience oftentimes where you get exposed to candidates that will come through caucuses. So your local House candidates or others that may be running for school board, things that are local to your body that matter, you might find them at your local precinct caucus as well. And so you get to have a relationship with them, talk about the things that are important to you as well as them. I would point out, again, like you said, you have to be 18 to vote in November to be elected as a delegate at a caucus. But we invite everyone across the family to come to caucus and participate. Consider it a community event. It's something that you can bring your high school teenagers to, and we encourage that. We actually have a teenage club for our county party so that they can come and have their own efforts and meet with other kids, and they come and help throw candy at the parades, right? And they have little backyard s'more activities often. So there's a way to be connected as community within the confines of caucus. And so I think that's an important thing beyond just these nuts and bolts elements, which I actually copied off of the SOS website. Thank you for the call out, because I start with the primary source of information as the truth of things. You can go ahead and go to the next slide there.
I'm going to ask 2 questions regarding this first slide because I'm unmuted, so I get to do that. One is, so the high school student who is invited to come in, they can't run for a delegate, but are they allowed to vote on things that are voted on in the caucus for the Republican Party?
They're not. No, they're not. But they're there to be with their families, to see the process. It helps to demystify things, I guess, going forward. And we do actually try to recruit more election judges while we're at caucus. And as you know, there's student election judges starting when they're 16. My 16-year-old is looking forward to actually giving that a role this coming year. So that's another thing that we are able to garner some of their high school participation.
So one follow-up on that before I ask my second question. So that high school student or whoever it is, are they allowed to comment on resolutions and ask questions about resolutions? Or are they as more an observer role where they're allowed in, but they're not supposed to speak either?
I think that depends on the community which you're meeting. I don't usually dictate down to our local neighborhood precincts to say these can be, children are seen and not heard. I think if they have a valuable contribution to add to the caucus environment, For example, maybe there's a question around things that are happening in schools, and you have students present who can testify to their own experiences and reality. I don't know why you wouldn't let them have something to say.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't stop any student that was in my caucus that I was convening at my precinct to say no. I think it's very important to bring that forward. I think it's also beholden on the individual precinct to kind of control what they have time for. You have to think that this is on a Tuesday night and we start at 7. It's getting kind of late.
Yeah.
So there's some practical management of time that has to come into play too. You can't have the 5-year-old constantly commenting. That being said, I have one of my teenage Republican members who's going to help out at a precinct as helping with the sign in at registration, because he's pretty computer savvy, and it frees up another adult in the room. And so we're like, sure, Joseph, you're 15, you're perfectly capable of helping with the printers and things. So that's kind of where we put that.
Thank you for that. The other thing I was just going to note, for those who might have been confused about the number of delegates that a precinct might get, for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I know we definitely have to move on, but like the House of Representatives, where there are 435 members, and the number of Congress representatives you get in your state is based on the numbers that the census comes up with. So am I correct here that depending on how Republican this precinct voted in the last election, the apportionment of delegates is heavier if you have more Republican voters in your precinct?
Yeah, absolutely. So
I just figured that would be another way for people to think about what you said.
You can go back to that point. You can go back to your last election cycle, go back to 2024, and you can look up the vote totals for your precinct, and then you can do the math. Now there is an allowance for how many delegates you can take. A particular basic political organizing unit can and does go back to the vote, and they can select a 1 for every 30 votes, a 1 to every 60 votes, or 1 to every 90 votes. Most organizing units will go to the 1 to 60. That's pretty common. Some organizations use a different ratio because they understand what their participation normally looks like, and maybe they want to allow for more participation, or maybe they manage expectations knowing that they don't have a lot of high turnout to start with, and they might go to 1 to 90. But typically it's 1 delegate for every 60 votes.
Thank you. So I moved on to your second of 3 slides.
Mm-hmm. So you make the most of it. So delegates do, and you had mentioned something like electing party leadership. Well, on the night of caucus, you elect new precinct officers. So your precinct chair, maybe you have a grand poobah of events. We usually require 2 officers. So a chair and a vice chair typically are selected. But again, the autonomy is there amongst the public in your neighborhood to come up with, I think we need to have an event chair for the precinct so that we can have a summer picnic. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to coordinate a night out. They're going to coordinate the thing that makes the most effort for them. That is going to be important here, to have it be tied into your own precinct and what your needs of your neighbors, and you decide. The other thing is that this is a 2-year cycle, and I'm glad you called out our political process website. But when you look at it from a 2-year perspective, what a lot of folks don't realize is that also gives you, it's like being a Costco member, right? Now you're a member of the party as a delegate, and you're representing on all kinds of aspects. So if you're an officer of the party, if you're elected to be a precinct officer, you're also part of something called the full committee, which is a stakeholder group. And not to get too in the weeds, but just think about the following year, we have another convention during the off year there's not elections for any major political office, but there are elections for the overall larger organization. And you get to help select the chair, the treasurer, the secretary of the organization, and a lot of your executive board members. So this is a accumulation and a fabric of your neighborhood that starts there with you and your neighbors and people in your precinct that actually creates the fabric of the entire political organization. So it's a gathering of a lot of volunteers.
Wonderful. Do you want me to go?
And you make the most of it. You make the most of it. It's up to you how much you want to exercise and how much you stay involved. And this is great. This is kind of some examples, my example list of all the things you can do. You could go to a parade, you can help at the county fair. Just being a delegate doesn't mean you just come and vote for a particular candidate to endorse them. There's so much more to it. And you become part of that team that delivers the support that candidates need, as well as giving time for you to interact with them, which helps translate some of the things that are most concerned to the public up to the people who are there, that are with you in that overall experience, and what you want to do with that, how you want to be able to bring that forward, and going to events and being present. And the more that you get firsthand exposure, the more you know, and you can share with your neighbors around you, your friends and colleagues at work. There's just a lot of things that you can do here.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Patricia. Stick around because there may be questions. Let us go to the DFL. Sonia Johnson is the Training and Party Affairs Director, and I'm really pleased that you could join us. And I am going to stop my sharing. Here we go. And there you go. Whenever you're ready, you can unmute and take it away.
Sorry, I started talking and forgot to unmute. I'm on Zoom calls constantly and still seems to get tripped up sometimes. Hi, everyone. I'm Sonia. I'm the Party Affairs Director for the Minnesota DFL. What that means in kind of less technical terms is I work with all of our local party structures. As part of the Minnesota DFL, we have nearly 200 caucuses, committees, local organizations, things that exist above the precinct level. And my role is to kind of help support them and help keep those processes moving with my department. And today I'm really excited to talk about precinct caucuses. I've been working full-time with the DFL since 2019, and I have only grown to love precinct caucuses more. And one of the things that I think Minnesota is particularly special about, and if I meet folks from other states, I love to brag about, is the fact that we do have caucuses, that our state has chosen to protect and encourage grassroots organizing, that we've decided as not just political parties, but like as a state as a whole, to make sure that folks can engage in their local communities and in their political organizations. So I'm thrilled to talk about it. There is some overlap, so I'm going to try and not cover that too much, but I am a rules nerd. So I thought I'd just share with you that the actual technical thing the party does, we have a constitution. I don't recommend you need to read it, but I did want to flag that we actually have a purpose as our party. We've said it in our documents. And what that is we're here to elect candidates, which I think most folks could guess, right? That's what you see us doing most of the time. But a big piece of that is that we do it by supporting individuals for public office who have our shared values, and that our shared values are defined in our platform. And what's really cool about caucus night is it's the beginning of everything our party does. It's the beginning step. It's that first step in deciding what our values are as a party, what is our platform, what are the things we stand for. It is also the first night that we start to elect folks who are going to pick who are endorsed candidates, which is how we as a party say, this is the candidate who we are going to back because they represent our shared values. This is who we are supporting. So this is kind of the groundwork for everything that fundamentally our party is and is supposed to be doing. And I heard there would be a couple of teachers on here, and I thought I might find some other nerds who would be interested in knowing the official rules here. But to kind of pull this out, like I just said, caucus night is how we start all of this work. It is our biggest night as a party. It is the night where we have the most participation that we have at any time in our 2-year cycle. We also kind of run in that 2-year cycle. And that's really, really exciting and cool and a great opportunity. I did just want to share briefly a little bit about our party structure. In the DFL, we, like the Republicans, we start with our voting precincts. That is the foundation of absolutely everything that we do. We elect officers at the precinct level. There's I think it's 4,105. The number exact switches a little bit of precincts in the state, but there are precincts covering every inch of land in the state of Minnesota. And we have the opportunity to elect leadership to the Minnesota DFL from every single one of those locations. Above that, we use actually the term organizing units. So if you are hanging out with the Democrats, you'll hear OU much more frequently than BPOU. We have just a slightly different term for that one. And it might be a county unit. If you are one of my folks in greater Minnesota, they are typically organized by county units. We also have one House district organization in Minnesota. We also have Senate districts. And because our organizing units need to account for every precinct in the state of Minnesota, that's in our rules, we have some that are weird combinations of House districts and county units. When they do the redistricting every time, nobody has yet matched county lines to Senate and House district lines to make my life easier. So we have to sometimes have those mixed units. So that's what you'll see at that next level for us. I would just broadly say for that 2-year cycle, this is where you see a lot of work happen. If you're seeing folks at your county fair, it is likely folks from our organizing units. It might be a Senate district, it might be your county unit. In greater Minnesota, we have both Senate districts and county units that are organizing, so you might see both of them. We have our next level up, which is our congressional districts. Those are they have conventions, they have organizations just like all of our organizing units do. And they also do work for the party at the congressional district level. And we have the state party, which is, I think, what most people, when you think of political parties, you probably think of the press conference or that kind of statewide piece of it. But a lot of that work is happening at all of these levels below. And in Minnesota, we actually really limit it for the DFL to this is largely led by volunteers. And it's really just fundamentally run by our amazing, amazing volunteers. I get to work with them. We have around 2,000 volunteers currently holding positions in Minnesota, regular positions, not just kind of being delegates to these conventions, but just constantly doing this work. So I want to shout them out because they are very amazing and we could not do what we do without them. Jump in here. So I just want to jump through what are the activities of caucus night. These have been referenced a little bit already. They're not too different. First thing is we elect people to positions in the party on caucus night. We elect 2 types of positions, and I think it's helpful to kind of know the differences, which is one, we elect delegates, and then we also elect what I would call a party officer. So the distinction here is a delegate is somebody who is elected to go to a convention. Conventions are our top governing bodies, but they also tend to only meet once a year, and that is it. So when you are volunteering on caucus night to be a delegate, what you're volunteering to do is go to 1, maybe 2 meetings in the next couple of months, and then your job's largely done. So if you're looking for the short-term commitment, that's what you're going to see there. Our delegates are who pick our endorsements, though. A convention is our top governing body. They're going to vote on things like changing our constitution. This is what's happening at that level, and that's what our delegates do. Similar to the Republicans, we want our delegates to stay involved. We want them to support our candidates. We want them helping out at our county fairs. But the official commitment, time commitment of being a delegate is that convention that you are elected to attend. The other roles that we are electing for, and on caucus night, it is mostly our precinct chair and up to 2 vice chairs. So in the DFL, you can elect up to 3 officers out of every precinct who will serve a 2-year term. That term starts at the end of caucus night and goes till the end of the next caucus night. And what that job is their role is to get to know and find out who are the Democrats in their community and help to make sure the Democrats in their precinct vote. So that's who we're electing on that night. Now, at the next level of that organizing unit, we're going to have a convention. I will tell you right now, we're going to do the same thing at that convention also. And in years of state conventions, we actually do the same thing at the state convention. So we kind of are constantly electing these two groups to move up to those next levels. The other group, though, like I said, are these party officers. They're doing the work of the party every single day for the 2 years. They are the bread and butter of how this party functions, and really are why we can find the success we want to find. Something that I also think is cool to think about is we kind of function like a representative democracy in our party, even not just here in our country, which is our volunteers are elected to represent their community members. So we do also have it, because this question was already asked, I'll just proactively answer it. We also allocate delegates up to our organizing unit conventions. Those are allocated at a rate of you get one delegate and one alternate for every 40 individuals who voted Democrat in the last election, with a minimum of everybody gets 2. So no matter how many Democrats, there could be no Democrats. There's actually a handful of precincts that have no people in them. They still, in theory, if somebody moved to that between now and the last election, they still can elect delegates. We make sure that those precincts are still protected. They still get representation if there's Democrats there. So it's 1 for every 40 at that level. At the next level up, for like the state convention, we have a set number of delegates and we allocate based off of dividing that out amongst our delegates. So that's what we're happening for the voting for people. We also start our platform. So the DFL platform, the things in there have to come through our committees. That's how it gets there. The overwhelming majority of everything that is in our platform today got there because somebody brought a resolution to Precinct Caucus Night, and it continued to move up the process. So on caucus night, you can bring your resolutions, you can present them. We have a form that you're supposed to fill out. If you forget it, we have told our volunteers to please have copies of the form so you can just write on it on that night. One of the best memories I have was my second caucus. Was a bunch of folks really cared about the press. It was in 2018. We were concerned about them. And we decided to, as a room, write a resolution that night and submitted it and got it passed up. And that is now part of what got passed all the way up through the state convention. So that's what's really cool about this is you can take the idea, the weird thing you've been thinking about, and you can pass it up through the process. And I'll identify just in a second here who all gets to participate in that process. We have slightly different rules on that. So I'll cover that in a second. And then ultimately, I've told my party leaders this a lot. I Googled the first time when I started working here, I thought precinct caucus was a weird phrase. Like, what does that mean? So I Googled it because that's what we do, I assume. And it really just means your precinct is your smallest electoral boundary that exists in the state. There's nothing smaller electorally that you can go to. And it's a caucus, which is just a meeting of people with shared political views. So it's just the smallest community meeting you can have of people who share your values. And I think that's something that's really cool about the state. I think it's something that is one of our greatest strengths is we create the opportunity for political discourse in a way that we get to build relationships and build community, which is really what we want to happen on caucus night, is to have that community building. And then just to note, we do have some slightly different rules about who can participate. You do need to reside in the precinct. This is what you're referring to in ours. But if you will be 16 by November 3rd, 2026, you are eligible to participate other than you cannot vote or run for a position, which means, yes, you can bring a resolution and you can present your resolution and you can vote on your resolution if you will be 16 by that next election day. So that means some 15-year-olds fall into this category. This means we've got some younger folks who can participate in that way. They just can't run for those positions on caucus night, but they can vote for it. Or they can vote for those resolutions and they can bring them. Similarly, though, if you've got like a really passionate 14-year-old, I know some members who are active in our party right now who started as passionate 14-year-olds who went to their caucus, and I promise you they were allowed to speak. It is not something that is always the same. It can depend on how busy the room is, but yes, it is generally something that is something we encourage. We want political activity. And then I saw this in the chat. There's a question about, do you need to register? There is no party registration in Minnesota. I saw this just to identify that. That's not a thing in the state. So you just need to affirm, at least for the Democrats on caucus night, that you are not a member of another party and you agree with our values. If you can do that, awesome. You are welcome to come be a part of it. We want you here. And then I just wanted to share, because I was asked about some young DFLers. And I just wanted to share that in 2024, we actually had the 2 youngest delegates to the national convention in the country. We had both the youngest and the second youngest. And we actually had another 17-year-old who was just, when he was elected to go to the national convention, so he was just eligible to vote also. He just happened to be a little bit older than the other 17-year-olds who were with us at the national convention. So we were able to bring them through. They went through that caucus process and were able to really have their voices seen on the largest stage. This is something we've encouraged for years. When we do national delegates, that's not this year. Don't have a presidential election this year. We actually set goals as a party to make sure that we are going out of our way to ensure that young folks are participating in the process and are doing that outreach. So we love to have them. They are very, very, very welcome. If you have young folks also looking to connect to the party, I'll have my contact information. You can check out dfl.org/caucus, has information on participating in caucuses. Partyaffairs@dfl.org is the generic kind of where we can help you get to folks. We have an organization called MyDFL, that's Minnesota Young Democrats. They work to kind of organize any individuals under the age of 35 can participate. I believe there's also a high school Dems branch of that. I believe there's a college Dems, and most of our college campuses have a college Dems. So if you reach out, we can help you find whatever the appropriate level is for our young folks to get involved too. With that, I will take my screen down and pass it back. I hope I didn't go too long for you.
We had a lot of details.
Okay. Hopefully everybody got to hear most of that. I know our links get destabilized or whatever Zoom does on that. It was a whole hour webinar, and if anybody wants to see the whole thing, just let me know and I can get you the link to that webinar. And I've got just a couple more things to share on. Let's see. There we go. Now, can we see my slides again with each party runs its own caucus? And we just did that. Both of the GOP and the DFL people talked about resolutions. And these resolutions are statements of positions of the party that make up the party platform. It's usually a positive statement. It's adopted at the precinct level and then advances up each level to the state and maybe even to the national level. The one big thing is there's a format for them and they need to be in writing. So how do you present a resolution? Well, the basic format is state a problem or an opportunity with the relevant facts and context, provide a rationale for adopting that position, and then declare what the position as a policy statement. Each party has a little different format, so double check when you want to introduce a resolution to make sure you're doing it in the correct format. Now, League of Women Voters provided us with an example of a resolution. And I think what they did was so that our presenters here would see how good they are at tongue twisters. So you'll see the whereas the purple people eater feeders represent 15% of the local economy in 13 Minnesota counties, whereas employers are unable to recruit and train purple people eater feeders over the last 5 years, and whereas the state of Minnesota currently does not fund any programs for purple people eater feeders skill trainings, therefore it's resolved that the Woolly Party of Minnesota support adequate state funding to the technical schools and employers for training and hiring the purple people eater feeders. It gives you, here's the problem and here's the solution format. So that might help a little bit when you're thinking of caucus things. One thing you do know is if you need to take time off work to go to this precinct caucus, Your employer should give that to you. They'd like 10 days written notice, which I think is probably a little late right now. But if you go to a university, community college, etc., public schools, they're not supposed to hold any classes or events after 6 p.m. that evening so that people and families can actually go to these caucuses. Also, if you have any accessibility needs or variations, contact your local party and they should be able to make accommodations for you, whatever you need. This graphic gives us another look at, you start at the precinct caucus locally, you go up to the next unit, that basic organizing unit, whether it's the county, the Senate district, the House district, then to a congressional district convention and a state convention. And that state convention then it will go to a national convention when it is a presidential year. Unlike elections, the caucuses are run by local and state. Unlike election, which are run by local and state government officials, precinct caucuses are run by the parties. Every aspect, including the site location, the meeting agenda, how well the meeting is run, etc., is the responsibility of the party and its leaders. If you have questions, concerns, complaints, please talk to your precinct caucus and contact your party. The government official is not likely to be able to help. And I do have information that I can send as to how to get hold of the two major parties. And of course, there's the Precinct Caucus Finder tool on the Secretary of State's website. Now, I'll get back so I can see all of you, I think. There we go. So does anybody have any questions? We went through that probably not as fast as I thought, but it felt like it was a lot of information. So any comments, or make sure you unmute your microphone. I can't quite see all of us, so just go ahead and speak up. Okay,
This is probably more of a curiosity question, and I don't know if anyone is in a position to even answer it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. It sounds like on the video we watched, both the DFL and the GOP said that you can participate if you agree with the party constitution. And I'm curious as to how, as more and more people are declaring themselves independent, how they can participate in that whole process if they don't want to say, I fully endorse the platform or the Constitution is what they're saying. So does anyone have a speculation on how that works?
Beth, why don't you try it?
Well, wouldn't they have to have their own caucus, the independent party?
Well, it's interesting enough, the list that she showed didn't show an independent party on there. She showed, I think, 3 fractional parties, or maybe 4 of them were there.
Yeah.
So
there was an independent party at one time in Minnesota, and I don't think many people are voting for that anymore. And so you've got to get a certain percentage of the voters to be recognized.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the question is, there isn't an independent party, but people declare themselves independent, and they want their voices heard. But it seems like with this 2-party caucus system, there isn't really a way for independent thinkers and voters to honestly commit going to a caucus. And it seems a little slanted towards just the organizational pieces of the political world. And I'm not asking for someone to create an answer, but I'm wondering if anyone knows of an answer of how independent voters and thinkers can actually participate.
Bill, I go back to the thing that was said early on in this, and it she said it was a question you ask yourself. Do I believe in the basic principles of this party? And if so, then you're at the right spot. So I don't know if that is helpful at all, but I guess it makes me think about that. Do I, believe in the basic principles? And if so, maybe I could select one of the major, GOP or DFL caucuses. So
yeah.
it's just a thought.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like you're signing the contract. It's just, it sounds pretty loose, and I think that answered the question.
I think too, if we think back to when Ronald Reagan started with the GOP party and things, this is the things they believed in. What that platform looks like today is very different. And actually, I think the DFL platform is probably different than it was back in the 80s too. And it's just, if you get enough people, and they may be calling themselves independent, but decide this is the party I want to start, and those resolutions and changing their constitution can slowly change them into, morph into something.
If I may
It sounds like it would be a lot easier for a lot of independent people to join the caucus and co-opt the Constitution.
There's
If I may
really
comment?
no rules against it, but
No.
it takes time because it's so many little meetings and you have to have somebody at all of them.
Right,
If I may
right.
comment,
Yeah.
ma'am, if I may comment,
Yes, go ahead.
I think you, in your presentation in the beginning, the two parties are statutorily regulated, reference the caucuses. Would I be correct in assuming that or saying that?
Yeah, they're mandated to hold a caucus.
Okay, and I don't know the specifics of the statutory regulation, but I assume that they perhaps would give governance to the specific party as to how they run their precincts. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yeah, they hold the caucus, but they're told to hold the caucus, but they have to have their own rules.
Then that would, I guess, each one would preclude the attendance of someone who is not either Republican or Democrat at your specific caucus.
Yeah. Well, you noticed in the Democratic list, she said they ask you if you're a member of another party. And if you say no to that, then you're in. So if you had been a member of one party, wanted to switch parties, you could do that. There's no prohibition that says you can't.
Is there a mechanism at either precinct, either party, where attendees can, for lack of a term, challenge the attendance of someone there?
I haven't heard of it. Beth, have you heard
Well,
of it?
I just say something that happened. Don't remember how many election cycles ago, but I was at our precinct caucus, and a gentleman whom I didn't know presented some resolutions and made some statements that really seemed like they didn't fit in our caucus. And that's because he went to the wrong place. So he should have been caucusing with the other party. And I mean, we just sort of said, well, are you sure you're at the right place? And then finally he discovered that no, indeed he was not. And so he left. But that was handled just informally. And he made the mistake in going to the wrong place.
So that was a volunteer extraction from that end.
Mhm.
Are you aware of any challenge procedure at all?
I am not.
Can the caucus participants make a decision in terms of anyone attending?
I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that happening either. It's basically a neighborhood gathering. So I think it sort of depends upon the civility of your neighborhood. And so in most cases, it would be handled very informally. And if somebody introduced a resolution that didn't seem to fit with what everybody else was thinking, they'd just vote no on it and go on.
I asked my question basically, it seems like we have a lot of cultural contestants.
Yeah.
And if someone would show up at a caucus, for the purpose of agitation, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I was wondering if statute or something would allow the participants to challenge whomever may be there under that circumstance.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Charles. I could do some checking and email you if I find an answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe as a bit of a follow-up. So when the primary started happening, caucus attendance, which never was fantastic, fell drastically. And it'll be interesting to see if caucus attendance picks up again.
Yeah.
That's just a comment. Didn't ask or answer anything, but
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I'm not seeing anything. Okay. If anybody has any questions later on, you can go ahead and you've emailed me to get this link, and you could just email me again with that question. And I have a source at the Secretary of State's office or at the League of Women Voters state office that can help me research some of those questions, and I could get back to you. And any of the materials that you want or things like that, let me know. I could get those links for you. For members of League, we are going to have our business meeting next. And if you just stay on, any of our guests, if you'd like to know more about League of Women Voters and want to be our guest at our meeting, you're more than welcome to stay.
I have one question before we check off, and I should have asked this early on, is how many of the participants in this meeting have been to caucus before?
Ages ago.
So it looks like there's a 50% opportunity for some new caucus members this time around. Well, I have, and I'll tell you what, though, it was a good reminder of what the whole process is. Not that I forgot, but it's really just a really good reminder of how it works. So thank you, CC and the League, for doing this.
And it's a good reminder of how powerful a voice is at this level, because you really can get an idea in at least ways at your precinct caucus, and it may not go beyond the next two levels or anything, but the next time around you can try again. Pretty soon things shift. So, okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to attend.
You're welcome, Charles. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yep. Bye-bye.